Hello everyone, Revan Magus here, welcoming you to part 2 of Levelhead versus Mario Maker 2. So, in the last one, we went over some of the power-ups that were available in Levelhead and tried to tie a couple of similarities between them. In this episode, we are going to go over the enemies of Levelhead and kind of give you a comparison to them in Super Mario Maker 2. Obviously, there are going to be more enemies available in Mario Maker 2 just because it expands across all the different games that have been made of Mario Maker, including like the original Super Mario Bros. 2, 3D Land, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more variety and just because of the larger extent of the game. But that doesn't mean Levelhead doesn't have some enemies that are similar and kind of give you some of the idea between what the enemies do and how they kind of tie in. Alright, so first of all, the very first enemy I believe that you will see when you go to create a level is called a Vacrat. These are honestly just kind of like your basic enemy, except the key difference is they would probably be more similar to like a Skip Squeak from Super Mario 3D World, I believe is which one it is that they were first in. And the idea with them is they kind of like go after you with this kind of like little bit of a hop, but when you do pass past them, they will end up turning around and trying to chase you. They're relatively like intelligent in the fact that they do track the character and try to go after him in that way. So that's kind of a very similaristic way they are. Alright, next up we got the Swoop Dupe, I believe is how it is said. This is kind of it looks like a bird with like a needle, so it's kind of like the bee to a degree from Mario Brothers, but I think the one that's most similar to, at least in my mind, is the fishbone from New Super Mario Brothers U, I believe. When you put wings on the fishbone, it becomes more of like a homing, targeting creature that like will zip towards you. The Swoop Dupe is kind of like that as well because it does look at the player and it tries to dive bomb them wherever they are at. It has a very like straight line approach to it, so it's kind of similar in that way. That's probably the closest you're going to get. Alright, next up we got the Scrub. Now I'm gonna say some of these enemies that are in Levelhead are very, very similar to each other. They all kind of have this very similar functionality with them. And pretty much with the Scrub, the easiest way to compare this is the like Koopa Troopas, probably the red ones, because these ones do not fall off of like the terrain. I know like some of the creatures in Mario will actually walk off the ledge, and similarly in Levelhead there are a couple that will as well. So this is one that's a little bit more intelligent, won't actually walk off a ledge, kind of stays within the parameters. Alright, so next up we have the Robo Factory from Levelhead. This is one of those, I mean it's pretty much the same as like the warp pipes that spawn enemies, the bonsai bill like launchers that end up like spawning enemies that you can put stuff in with. The difference is you can set how many times they will spawn, how many times, like what will spawn out of them, that kind of stuff. So it's very similar in that regard. Honestly, once you defeat all the enemies inside the factory, that's when like it disappears. So it is an enemy that can be erased at least. Alright, so this one was kind of harder. This is the Pop Jaw. Basically, the Pop Jaw in Levelhead is this creature that looks like, at least in my mind, a shark. But it becomes like a blue light trail, and it'll like go under the character and try to like jump up like a shark, like Jaws. The only thing I can figure out that looks kind of similar is the Monty Mole from New Super Mario Bros. U. They both kind of pop out of the ground. I believe though that if I'm remembering right, Monty Mole doesn't like re-dig and come out somewhere else. That's just kind of the biggest key difference, is that you know, one goes underground and like will pop up underneath, and the other one kind of like pops up once and is done. So this is kind of the key difference, but they're probably the most similar. All right, next up we got the Ocula in Levelhead. This is the probably dumbest enemy in the game. It runs in a straight pattern, and then if there's nothing in its way, it falls off and dies. There's really nothing else it does. It's just a very simple walk straight forward, and that's it. It pretty much ignores the player too. So this is kind of similar to the green Koopa Troopas in the sense that that's all they do. They don't really do anything else. There's really nothing else exciting about them. So just kind of a basic enemy. You're very basic. Now this is one I had a hard time with. Lizumi from Levelhead is basically a wheel with spikes that it rolls at you at like a fast speed. When you jump over it, it'll roll back towards you. Jump over it again, it'll just keep coming towards you. The only thing I can find that kind of maybe is similar is the bully from Super Mario 3D World, I believe is which one it is. And it's similar in the fact that they both try to ram you. I believe the bully, though, doesn't do damage on hit. I think it just bounces you back, which is different. The Lizumi will hurt you. So it's a little bit different in that regard. All right, next up we have the Flip Whip. This is probably one of the most interesting because its entire thing is it sticks out its tongue, it like swings it in an overhead arc, and then it jumps. It's a really interesting enemy in that like there's not a lot that compares to it. Probably the only thing close would be like a chain chomp, because both of them kind of do an attack, take a second, and then like do a hop or move around. The chain chomp though only does that initial attack before it like kind of retracts, whereas the Flip Whip does it more like it does focus the player. All right, so next up we got the Flapjack. It looks kind of like a toad in a way, and its entire thing is it just kind of hops. Their biggest similarity is obviously going to be the bloopers. They kind of go in this like very like hopping pattern, except they stay more in the air, so it's kind of similar. I would say that's going to be your best similarity though between the two. They just have that kind of similar movements. All right, and the final enemy that we have in Levelhead is the Blobfish. Blobfish? Anyway, this is basically like a bird speaker that kind of flies away from you or flies like in a general direction. You can obviously set some of these attributes. So you can kind of change the way. This is just a very basic at their default. So I would think the closest would be like a Cheep, honestly. Kind of hop around, kind of like, for the most part, go in one direction or ignore the player. And when you add wings, it's kind of similar. So now that we've gone over all the enemies in Levelhead, kind of gives you a basic rundown. I will say Super Mario Maker does have the benefit that there are bosses in it. You can create bosses. Yes, in Levelhead you can make big enemies and you can make massive enemies, but they're not really like boss caliber. They're just a big enemy that takes more hits. So there is that option, but it's not really the same as getting somebody like Bowser or any of the Koopa Kids. So this has kind of been a basic breakdown, kind of give you some similarities, so you have like a kind of idea when you're making your levels of what to do with these monsters and enemies. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like on this video, please leave a comment, and leave a subscribe. And until next time, I'll catch you later.